Good morning, everybody. Do a just quick check of the sound. Jessica, can you hear me okay? Or anybody? Great, thank you. Yeah, some of you might be surprised to see me here this morning. This is the Sunday morning practice group that Mark Nunberg usually leads, but he is leading a retreat for Southern Dharma Retreat Center this weekend remotely. So I'm here subbing for him and grateful to be here with you all. So we'll begin as we normally do on Sunday mornings with a sitting period. We won't start with the chant, but we will just jump right into the sitting period today. So find a comfortable position where you can sit for about half an hour. Nice to see all the good mornings in the chat. Just inviting all of the energies of mind and body to settle. And noticing what that feels like, that process of settling. And also taking a moment to connect with our intentions for practice right now. And they don't have to be grand, just noticing what's already here in the heart. And really letting this goodness, allowing this goodness, our own intentions, our aspirations to land in the heart. And suffuse the body. You might have a sense of warmth or stillness or depth or something. Maybe that's hard to even put into words. That can be felt right here as we connect with our own goodness in this very simple way. And from this place of understanding that this heart knows how to be good, we can allow experience to be here. Allow this moment to unfold as it will. Trusting that there's some capacity to meet whatever is expressing itself currently. This kind of trust in our own goodness, this confidence in our capacity can support this necessary quality of mind that allows experience to have its say, to express itself. And what is experience and how does it express itself? Experience might be body sensations or emotion, thought, sound. Not being afraid of anything. And we don't even need to go looking for experience. It's already here. So as this heart and body settle, it becomes easier to see what's already here. And although the first step is to recognize what's already here, we're even more curious about the relationship to experience. How is this heart connecting with the truth of now? So, this attitude of allowing includes allowing our relationship to be known, our imperfect relationship to life, including the not liking this or not liking that. including wanting to think this thought or wanting more of something, more stillness, wanting less of this. It's actually only in this settledness, this capacity of this heart to settle and steady, with these more subtle experiences, this relationship to experiences illuminated for us. Remembering that this clear seeing won't come through force. It will come as this heart relaxes and trusts the unfolding of the present moment, the natural unfolding of the present moment. We can play around in this territory, trying too hard to see, or not trying, just giving up. Seeing if we can find some ease with the kind of effort that we're making here. And we'll be able to tell because we'll feel tension or overwhelm, or we might feel sleepiness or apathy. And so we'll make a correction. And this is the art of practice. Receiving experience, knowing experience, allowing experience to express itself, understanding our relationship, adjusting the effort. This is the playful and creative process of practice. Enjoy. And opening your eyes whenever you're ready. Thanks for your practice, everyone. Go ahead and move the body a little, if you'd like. And it's always appropriate at the before the sit or after the sit to use the chat to say hello, like many of you have. It's great to feel connected in the ways that we can over technology. Chat is such a nice feature. I've grown to really appreciate it. It's nice to see people joining into these weekly programs at Common Ground from all over the world. Cool. So I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, which I should have done, but my name is Shelly Graf. I am one of the staff Dharma teachers at Common Ground and the associate director at the center. And I lead the Wednesday night practice group, but today I'm here subbing for Mark, which we do for each other and when we're off doing whatever we're doing. So yeah, good to be with you. And if you're here for the first time, welcome. So on Wednesday nights, I've spent a few weeks talking about exploring really this practice of samadhi, this teaching on samadhi. And if you don't know what that means, it's a way of describing this mind that can be steady and the energies of mind and body that can really collect and unify in the support of that steadiness. So we've been exploring what that looks like in the context of our lived experiences and daily life, our engagements, our participation in relationships, and such. So I'd like to continue being off of that practice theme a little bit this morning. I love the way Ajahn Sucitto describes this practice of cultivating the steadiness of heart and mind as this connection to our humanity. So we can see just in that definition that the depth of this exploration can be really rich. And it can often be limited when we think of samadhi or this capacity for this really for to develop this great competence of heart and mind. It can really be limiting when we describe it in uh, uh, limited ways. So, like by describing samadhi simply as concentration. Although it's not wrong to understand this practice that way, it's not wrong to understand the mind that can really focus, but it's a yes and. And often our relationship to the idea of concentration can be challenging. Right? So when I say the word concentration, you might even just explore what comes to mind. And I know for me, it's often, and from what I hear from other people, it's often this sort of difficulty with our capacity to stay with a particular experience for a long period of time. So we feel like we're either getting it right or failing, right? And in order to get it right, then we must try harder. So if I could only try harder, then I would be more concentrated. If I could be more concentrated, then I could be more calm. And if I could be more calm, then I'm on the right path. And so we want to sort of expand and explore our understanding of steadiness of mind so we can see how really practical and pragmatic and useful it is for us beyond these like pretty simplistic and limited definitions. Because it's actually, so why does that matter, right? Why does it matter that we explore samadhi in a broader context? Well, it matters because we want to find out, we want to figure out, we want to understand how we can participate in our lives. So, in the beginning of that sit, I encouraged us to connect with our aspirations, our intentions. And just in doing this, if we were sitting together, reflection, we would all probably come up with different things to say, but some variation of, I want to be healthy, I want to be capable, I want to be there for my friends and family, I want to be able to participate in activism, and I want to be engaged in the world in ways that the world really needs me to be engaged right now. So we might say some of these things to give voice to how we care about practice. And so what is the sustaining force for our engagement? And engagement, external engagement in the ways I've described, but also internal engagement. So how do we participate in the way that the mind is working, in the activities of mind? How do we participate in that? And so you might have seen during the sit that different experiences come forward, right? A body sensation, a thought, a feeling, an emotion. And so as each of these experiences come forward for us, we're participating right there. This mind is deciding what to do with that, right? Stay and explore, move, avoid, get interested, have an opinion, have a preference about it. So all of these participatory ways we engage our internal experiences are really relevant as much as and including the ways that we are participating in our external environment, right, with our family and friends. And in fact, they're really connected because the mind that can learn how to respond, learn how to connect, land with the experiences, the internal experiences, then that mind can also develop the capacity to not simply react to what's happening. So our practice um, isn't just about feeling into the pleasant or the positive mind states that are there, like gratitude or patience. It's nice when those flow forward, and we certainly want to cultivate that capacity. But this mind is also cultivating the sense of being with anything, right? Being with any experience that's here, that's already here. So, any experience that's already here. And as this mind learns how does this heart, this whole constitution, right? This heart, mind, body experience, because the body is always responsive to what flows in the mind, and the mind is responsive to what happens in the body. We can see this with body pain or with mental pain. With mental pain, then the body has some response, and with physical pain, the mind has some response. So, as this heart, mind, body, this whole constitution, this nervous system learns how to connect and steady itself with with all the different experiences that flow internally and externally, we develop greater and greater resiliency, greater capacity. And it's in this development of capacity that we find the sustaining, what is sustaining for us, that we can actually continue to be engaged, that because it becomes practice. We can stay engaged, we can stay involved, we can stay right here in the middle of this messy relationship. Right? I can stay with you while you're upset with me. I can feel into the pain of this own heart. I can feel into what's moving in yours because I've learned how to, this heart has learned how to be steady, even with very unpleasant experiences like shame or guilt, for example, or anger or fear. So the steadiness of mind is really relevant. It's relevant internally, it's relevant externally. And to place the steadiness of mind on the path, there's the Buddha described this eightfold path. So this um, really a teaching about some instruction about how we can live and engage in our internal and external world, right? So in three parts. So there's a wisdom part of the path, wise view, wise intention, and then there's a ethical conduct or integrity part of the path. And this is wise livelihood, wise speech, wise action. And then there's this uh, samadhi part of the path or steadiness of mind part of the path. And this involves concentration, mindfulness, and effort. So really kind of noticing that that effort is included in this part of the path is important. So exploring samadhi asks us to adjust and kind of radically adjust our orientation to life. So we're often really goal-driven characters, right? I wish I could ask you to nod your head if you're with me. But I trust you're all going, oh yeah, right? Outcome-oriented, goal-driven humans. We want to get somewhere, we want to achieve something, we want to resolve something. And so this path is really asking us to find a way to engage for the sake of learning, which is different than for the sake of getting somewhere. And I don't know about you, but often I catch myself here, sitting down on the cushion and expecting that somehow, because I'm trying hard, that the mind will be what I want it to be: calm, serene, full of love. And yet it's anything but that quite often. So here is where I can see, like, oh yeah, wanting to get somewhere, trying to get somewhere. But instead we're reorienting in the direction of learning, because it's there that we find a steadiness of engagement. We're actually not trying to control. We're not trying to resolve a problem. We're not trying to fix something. We're actually trying to learn what we can learn and apply that learning in the next moment. And as we do that again and again and again, see what we can learn, show up just to be a learner. Oh, what is happening here? Okay, an emotion is here, right? And then how does this mind participate with that emotion? What does this mind do with that? How does this mind relate to that in a way that supports a freedom, a kind of freedom that's there, or a spaciousness, or a capacity or resiliency to be with that, to be steady even with that? Or how does this mind fight that experience so that it contributes to my struggle? And as the heart learns that difference, right? That difference of participation that leads in the direction of freedom, or participation that leads in the direction of suffering, this heart learns something about how to be free. And as this heart learns, it can share, right? This person, this body, this human can be a model of something that's sustaining, both for ourselves and for others. there is a sutta, as I've been exploring this topic for more than a month now, maybe 6 weeks or so, on Wednesday nights. More recently, this sutta came to mind, really because one of my teachers likes to talk about this, Andrea Fella. And it's this very short sutta that I've practiced with quite a bit. And it's basically this time when this being comes to the Buddha and asks the Buddha, how did you, dear sir, cross the flood? It's this very simple sutta, and the Buddha's response: without tarrying, friend, and without hurrying did I cross the flood, by not halting and not straining, neither stopping nor rushing. Those are my words, sorry. The Buddhist words with different translations. So one translation, there's without hurrying or tarrying, and another translation is without halting nor straining. So different words to describe tarrying and hurrying, like stopping or rushing. So this very basic question, right? How, sir, did you cross the flood? And we often we can explore what this means by flood right here. So when we think of flood, we often think of the external, not just the external, but sometimes the internal conditions. We think of the experience, like the experience of anger, or the experience of racism, right? Or the experience of climate disruption. So we think about these forces of oppression, these kind of external forces, we might say, and we think that's why we're suffering. And it's true that these are very real influences in our lives and contribute greatly to how healthy we feel and how healthy we are, how safe we are, how secure we are in lots of ways. So it's not denying that one bit. But what's interesting to the Buddha is how this mind relates to those experiences. So when the Buddha says, I cross the flood without tarrying or hurrying, he's really talking about crossing the flood of suffering, right? Of relating to experience, not to experience itself, but to relating to experience. So I related by not hurrying. I related by not tarrying. And we use this, it's such a wonderful description, flood, when we can think about it, because how often do we use examples like, I feel like I'm drowning, or I feel like my head's underwater, or something like that, to describe our relationship to experience, right? Life can feel so overwhelming. And it's true, there's a lot coming at us. There's no doubt about that. So it's not denying that, but also just pointing to where we have some say. And where we have some say is how we cultivate a wise relationship to experience. That's where we have some say, and it actually supports our ongoing participation and action. So as I describe this eightfold path, hopefully we could see that this path isn't a passive path. It's not accurate to think about this path as passive. It's actually a process of participation in many ways. So we can describe this path differently, and we can describe this path in many ways. But one way is that we could describe it as an active path, a path of transforming our relationship to experience, right? Of finding a way through the process of transformation, really transforming this mind from a mind that can only be reactive as its exclusive strategy for dealing with life, to a heart that knows how to respond in a variety of really skillful ways. So, in these three different parts of the path is like clarifying wisdom, clarifying integrity. Really, we can see the action right here in the part of the path that's about right speech and right livelihood and right action, very active, engaged. And then also in this path of steadying or steadiness, samadhi, because it includes effort. So, including our participation, how we participate in transformation or clarification. So, how did you cross the flood, dear sir? The Buddha answers, without tarrying, without hurrying. And then this being says, kind of like, well, say a little more about that. And so ask the question again, but how did you, dear sir, without tarrying, without hurrying, cross the flood? What did you actually do? And this is the Buddha's response. When I, friend, tarried, then I sank. When I, friend, hurried, then I was swept away. And so, friend, untarrying, unhurrying, hurrying, did I cross the flood. And so what sticks out to me is a really hopeful statement for us that the Buddha sank and the Buddha was swept away. So he learned how to not hurry, how to not tarry by actually exploring and sinking and getting swept away moment to moment, right? So I hope that feels hopeful to you too, to know that this is a path of exploration. It's an art form. We get to participate and creatively in our minds and in the world and see what actually is supportive. Like, oh, that didn't work. I can see that didn't work. Oh, yeah, that was beneficial. Let me see if I can cultivate that, make that a little stronger. And this is how transformation happens, through this really active and creative process. And I also appreciate here that the Buddha is pointing to a way to freedom that includes the flood, right? The Buddha isn't saying that how did you cross the flood? By avoiding the flood. The Buddha didn't say that. The Buddha said, I crossed the flood through this process of sinking and getting swept away, sinking and getting swept away, sinking and getting swept away. So it's learning with and in our life. So it doesn't mean that we have to have minds that are perfectly clean, right? We don't have to have minds that are free of anger, or that never get drowsy, or that never feel overwhelmed, or we don't have to have these kind of these states of perfection that we hold for ourselves. It doesn't actually work to think that we're going to sit down on the cushion and our minds are going to be just how we want them to be, beautiful, perfect, compassionate places to abide. We can actually appreciate the process, the effort of practice, the effort that we put into participation, as the source of freedom. It's right here with this. So, can we find freedom with difficulty? Can we find freedom when the mind is angry? When anger is visiting the mind, when there's fear here, when there's hatred. And this is a really sweet exploration. And it really is very challenging too. I'm finding it really challenging these days to practice with the conditions, the internal conditions of this mind and the external conditions of the world, because life is overwhelming at times. And it doesn't matter how long you've been on the path. If we're awake right now, it can be very difficult, right? As we learn how to we're practicing cultivating and clarifying our relationship to, uh, all kinds of things. So the uncertainty of health at a time of pandemic, the reality of historical and structural forces and philosophical forces that oppress brown and black people, and especially in this country, like the values of whiteness and racism, as we relate to that, as we relate to the political nightmare that we're living through, right? Where there's just distrust and delusion and fear based rhetoric that we're consuming day in and day out. So these are really challenging. Um, these are challenging experiences, external experiences for our minds to steady itself with. And yet, the practice, the Buddha reminds us that this point of freedom is right here in and with our experience. It's right here in and with this current relating that's happening, right here with the rage, right here with the anger, right here. And when I said it doesn't make sense to expect that we sit down on the cushion and things become perfect and serene, it's due to this understanding of karma, really, that I say that. It's due to an understanding that every action, every moment of participation yields something, right? So there is some result, there is some residue with every mind moment that we have. So every moment where this mind has some thought, or every moment when we decide to do something with our body, right? We decide to clean the house, we decide to talk to our children, we decide to uh, march in a protest, we decide to do our work on the computer, we decide to tend our garden, whatever we're choosing to do, every action has some result, right? It matters how we are tending to our minds and how we are living our lives. So if we know this, then we understand that all of the moments when we're unawake and all of the moments when we're awake and practicing skillful response, they have some impact in how we relate to the current experiences of the present moment, right? So it doesn't make sense, for example, to think that we're practicing for this 30-minute period and forget to practice for the other 23 and a half hours of the day. If we forget to use our life as learning for 23 and a half hours, when we sit down and decide to learn something, that 30-minute period is going to bring with it the force of history, right? All those moments that we were either participating or that we were participating either in our awakeness or in our delusion. And how we spend our time now will plant seeds for future mind moments, future moments of engagement, future moments both internal and external. And and so it all really, so every moment, everything that we do matters, and we shouldn't get tight about that, but we should just understand that clearly, that our how we are participating, how we're relating, really has an impact both on this heart and this body, and on our relationships, and on our so on the relationships of the people we love with the people we love, and on and with those people in their relationships, and with other people in their relationships, and so on. So we can see how this even relatively small period of time that I'm choosing to clarify intentions, to cultivate skillful relating, has an impact far and wide. So when we practice allowing, when we sit down and we practice allowing, we're really not we're not talking about disengaging or some passivity. We're actually talking about recognizing what is already here, what is already happening. So this cultivating wise attitude to the present moment. by going, oh yeah, it's really like this. Yeah, we don't have to pretend anymore, right? Oh, this thought is already here, or this emotion is already here. So I'm going to just like practice cultivating a wise relationship to that. And that is a relationship that's not going to resist that truth. Like, historical truth is already here in our world. We're swimming in it, right? The truth of racism, for example, that's important to me. So it comes up quite often as an example. So we're going to practice wise relationship to the truth of the way things are. And this wise relating allows us to step into the next moment with a heart that's more connected rather than a heart that is resisting the way things are. So this cultivation of a steady heart, right, is the ground of wholehearted engagement for the long haul. This steadiness is cultivating this attitude of allowing, of saying, yes, yes, it's like this. And yes, I care. I understand that clarifying my relationship here really matters, right? Not forcing and not having an exclusive strategy of denial or distraction, right? So I'm going to not only allow, clarify this relating, but also participate with this skillfully. So if the mind is spinning out in rage, it's going to be really hard to track that. So I might need to just do what I need to do to get a grip so that when I speak or when I act, there is some potential of planting seeds that are going to be beneficial, right? Instead of planting seeds that are going to cause more harm. It's really hard the energy of rage, for example, is very strong in my experience. And it's hard for mindfulness, for mindful awareness to track that, right? It's very easy to get absorbed into it. So if that is the experience, then I am allowing that to be here because it's already here, right? So I'm going to cultivate this wise attitude to rage and I'm going to take good care of it because I understand that my participation has an effect, right? My participation with this rage has an effect on what's beneficial for myself and for others long term, right? It has a force of history and a residue that we can feel and understand. And so, as I've been learning and exploring over the past couple of months, I've been really interested in looking for examples in the world of other humans who seem to have some sort of competency in this area of finding a way to study, right? That doesn't mean have no problematic mind tendencies, but it means like being willing to and have this capacity to find some steadiness in and with the flow of life, right? And anger as an example, like anger comes, anger goes. We need to clarify our relationship and so that we can have some capacity to respond instead of just be swept away by the flood, right, of our suffering. So there are plenty of examples, I'm sure, for all of us, both really locally, like within our families and our friend groups and in our Sangha, and also these perhaps more widely known or examples with people that we might see on TV or um, be a force in our political realm. So I've been kind of looking at this from all levels. And one person in particular that has really stuck out to me, and hopefully to you too, is especially since recently with the passing of John Lewis, just getting a lot of inspiration from reading about the beautiful life that he led and his steady engagement over a long period of time from 20 years old to 80. and just all of the different flavors, all of the different moments. Um, the way he engaged in activism from a young man and until his death, it's just been a source of inspiration for me. And then imagining all the flavors, all the activities of heart that were there that he navigated the waters of, right? And clearly, you can imagine a human to be this engaged and not flip through them all, from grief and fear to despair and rage and hatred and anger. Probably it all came up, and deep, deep love, right? And as we read about and learn about his life, that the depth of that love really shines forth for me. So there's something about the steady heart that learns how to participate skillfully with the activities that are here. The different flows through the heart, the different emotions that might be here, the different mind states, the different thoughts and experiences. Being willing and able to do that with some skill, that participation, how that participation sort of transforms the force of our engagement from something that might burn out like anger and rage to something that might be sustaining like love and connection and a deep, deep caring for humanity. And it seems like John Lewis was really competent in this area. And just imagining what it was like for him as, in the early days in his 20s when he was marching for voter rights and that um, famous march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge from Selma to Montgomery, when he and Martin Luther King and others in force were stopped by military, and just imagining the streets lined with Confederate flags and so much anger, and the request to pray, and then people dropping to their knees before the force of violence hit them, and just imagining what that moment was like. I have to believe that John Lewis wasn't naive, that probably none of them were naive. They understood the potential for violence in that moment, and yet something allowed them to continue on step by step by step, and even in this really vulnerable way, to kneel down and take the blow, right? And not only that, but he almost died there, and yet continued to participate, to engage, because it was useful, because we needed him to, right? And so understanding he had a responsibility, right, to participate for the sake of all, march by march, step by step, activity by activity, for 60 years, at least 60 years, right? And up until his death, he still offered us something, right? Had prepared a letter, and you can find that on the internet in many places, but a beautiful call to continue to be engaged and find ways to engage skillfully, right? From a sustaining place, from a steady and sustaining place, this place that includes clarifying our relationship to experience and also moving with the flow of love, allowing compassion to guide us, to steady our engagement. So beautiful. It was just so obvious, like, oh, you knew you were a teacher, right? He knew he had a place and a responsibility, and found so many beautiful uses for his energies and his life force that were impactful and are still impactful, and honestly that I feel like I have to make good on, right? Like he gave so much. Now it is up to me and you and all of us to continue to use our energies well for the good of all. So I feel a real urgency in this area to find steady and skillful ways to use my energies, right? Right through this process of understanding, of allowing and clarifying relationship to experience so that I can stay in the game and we can stay in the game for the long haul. Thank you, everyone, for your patient attention today.